now, among other countries, but just to kind of brush up on your skills and get ready for the best interview that you've ever had. So a couple of points before your interview. So right now, a lot of you are in the process of doing applications through CASPA. And I noticed that through the chat room, I'm getting, I see a lot of questions about the whole application process. So, excuse me. So before your interview, you want to do your research, obviously, before you apply to schools. No, and this sounds kind of, like basic knowledge, but, I've been in PA education for a long, long time, over 20 years. And, in the past, we've had interviewed people that really don't know what they're kind of getting into. So it's really important that you know what a PA is and what we do, and be sure that you actually want this. So you want to know about the history of the profession, what we do on a daily basis, how we differ from medical doctors, nurse practitioners, etc. I saw that a lot of people have questions about shadowing PAs, and there are many programs that require shadowing hours. And the reason for that is, again, they want to make sure that you're really ready for this. And this is, I'm just seeing some questions. Where's the presentation? Hopefully you guys can hear me. Excuse me. So if there's any problems with audio, just I'll glance at the screen on occasion. So again, just do your research. Make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. You know intimately what a PA is and what they do. And if you're not sure, that really the best way to find out what a PA does is to go on the American Academy of Physician Assistants website, which is the aapa.org website, and join if you're sure you really want this. It's a really great idea to become a member of the AAPA. It's a non licensed PA membership, or even a non-student membership. So that would be a great way to research, excuse me, the profession. And getting work in some form of direct patient care is important because the vast majority of PA programs do require some type of patient care experience. And some of the ways that you can get that experience is maybe becoming an emergency medicine technician, or EMT, a certified nursing assistant, or CNA, medical assistant. Some programs actually accept medical scribe work. Our university does accept that, because even though you're not really examining patients or doing anything physically with a patient, you really know the medical terminology. So your direct patient care experience is really going to depend on, excuse me, the programs that you're interested in applying for. I'm sorry about my allergies. They're driving me crazy today. But the most important thing on preparing yourself for to be the most competitive applicant is ensuring a competitive GPA. So that's the most important thing, is if you're still in school, work on the grades, work on getting that math science GPA up, because that is a lot of what programs will focus on, is to make sure that you have the academic ability to get through a PA school, which is very competitive. Research schools to choose what works best for you, right? So we're looking at pandemic considerations, right? So I saw some questions: are a lot of schools using Zoom? Are a lot of schools still teaching online? And that, again, is going to depend on where the school is located. If they're in a hotspot right now, and so you want to know, are those schools that you're applying to, are they teaching online? Are they teaching face-to-face? Or is it more of a hybrid approach of curriculum delivery? And if it is a hybrid approach, housing costs are going to be a consideration for you if you have to move to that area. So is it worth, moving to that area, applying to that school, getting in, if you are, only going to have to be on campus a couple of times a month? So that's important to know. How is the university dealing with student safety, etc. So you want to also know the location, the length of the program, the cost, the prerequisite requirements, the resources, etc. So the competition, I will say, the competition is fierce. Most programs get a lot of applications. And so you need to be, you need to consider your flexibility and how much you want to be a PA. And the people that really, really want to be a PA will be as flexible as possible. They'll move anywhere they need to and do anything they have to get into a PA program. Now, this is really not applicable now, but once you apply, you want to be mindful of your travel needs and expenses for potential interviews. If you get called for an interview and you may need to either drive or take a train or fly to your destination, you want to be mindful of your travel needs and those costs. So let's pretend now that you've done all your homework and you've been chosen for an interview. So now what? It's exciting, but you want to learn as much as you can about the program way before you interview with them. So go onto their web pages and read their website thoroughly. And I do recommend that you not call the programs to ask questions that can easily be answered by reading the website, because sometimes there are some, depending on who's answering the phone and who's calling or who's answering those emails that you're sending, that could sometimes send the wrong message that you're just not thorough, you're not doing your homework. So read those web pages thoroughly, take notes, and really know your school before you get there so that you don't ask the questions that, again, can be very easily answered by looking simply on their website. Be familiar with all aspects of the program, so their mission, the curriculum, the layout of the curriculum, the faculty and adjunct faculty, and maybe the percentage of, who teaches what, clinical rotations and their clinical sites, specialties, if any, and then try to mention those in your interview and how you fit in with those aspects. So, if the mission speaks to you when you read the mission of the university or college, that's important. Make a note of that. And if you get called for an interview, you want to speak to that, when they ask you, why us? Why did you apply here and why are you here? Tell them why you would be the perfect fit for their college or university program. So, and again, this may not be applicable right now, but try to ask whomever is scheduling you for your interview what you can expect on interview day. So if you're physically going to an interview, where you have to park, and if you are going to a city or even a suburb, bring cash in case there is a charge to park and they may not accept ATM cards. So it sounds like a minute situation, but it can delay your ability to park and get to your interview on time if you don't have what you need. The length of time that you can expect to be there. So that's an okay question to ask, like, how long will I be there? Is this going to be an hour long, or are you going to be there for all day? How many interviews will there be? So, some schools have one interview with a couple of faculty. Other schools have several interviews. Other schools may use the what they call the multiple mini interviews, so that you may go to like maybe 10 small 5 or 10 minute interviews. And will there be a tour when you get there? A tour of the campus? Some do tours and some don't. And if they do not do a formal tour, you can ask if you're able to kind of wander around and look around, on your own. And should you bring anything to the interview, like a copy of your resume or CV. But again, I do recommend not to be too pushy and ask too many questions. Again, just the basics, just the things that you absolutely need to know to make the perfect interview. So you also want to make sure that you confirm your interview date and time about 1 to 2 days before your interview. Again, just to make sure that you have the right date and time. And again, if it's applicable and you're physically going to your interview site, it's always a good idea to make a dry run, driving there beforehand if possible, especially if you're going to a city campus, because parking and even traffic can be a little tricky, and directions, obviously. So you want to make sure you know exactly where you're going. And I always say that 30 minutes before your scheduled time is on time. So if your interview is scheduled at 10 a.m., make sure you get there by 9:30, the latest, even if that means you have to sit around and wait for a little while, because all of these things and how you present yourself makes a big impression, and first impressions mean a lot. So how do you dress in terms of your interview? So dressing, I recommend business attire. So if you're working in an office situation or let's say a private practice, that sort of thing, or, how do you dress? So, even if it is a virtual interview, you want to dress to impress. So for men, you want to wear, at the very least, a shirt and a tie. And if you really want to impress, wear a suit, like with a jacket, and, dress shoes, obviously. But at the very least, a business attire, shirt, tie, nice dress pants or suit pants, and dress shoes. And for women, business dress or business suit always comes across very professionally. Dress shoes. You want to avoid inappropriate dress. So what does that mean? Business casual would be inappropriate. So what is business casual? Like a polo shirt, without a tie. That's business casual. That's not something that you want to do for an interview that is so important like this. You do not want to wear sneakers. You don't want to have sloppy hair or undressed hair. And even though it's a sensitive subject, you do not want to wear any type of provocative clothing, anything that's too low cut or something that would wear to a club. Again, it sounds silly, but you want to dress to impress. This is a professional training program, so you want to present yourself as such. And for the virtual interviews, and this is important, be very aware of your physical background for a virtual interview. Keep it clean, keep it professional, and be sure that you're not going to be disturbed by anyone or anything in your household, like pets barking and that sort of thing. So check your technology beforehand. You want to try to do a test run with a family member using same or similar technology that your interviewer will be using. So if you find out that they'll be using WebEx, you can set up a WebEx meeting with your family member, and just to make sure that it works. If you're using Zoom, you want to download all the appropriate things that you need to download and make sure that the technology and the internet works before your interview. Okay. Excuse me. Check the internet connections and the strength. And for interviews, even though I'm not using a video today, for your virtual interviews, I would recommend that you absolutely use a video. If you have video, do not turn it off. Present yourself. This is really supposed to be a face-to-face interview, and your interviewer wants to see you. Facial expressions and physical interactions are important, when you're talking to somebody. And if you turn that off, it may actually affect their decision in letting you into the program. So now, whether you do virtual or on-site, you want to practice with somebody you trust before your interview, okay? So not at the site, obviously. You don't want to practice at the site, but consider recording yourself, and you try to practice using a virtual method so you can actually see how you are presenting yourself and what you look like and what you sound like. Be sure to eat a light meal before you interview, whether you have to go physically or whether you do virtual. You don't want to do something that's very stress-provoking on an empty stomach. You'll be nervous and you don't want to get lightheaded. So be sure to eat a light meal before you do that. And as I spoke with before, if you're going to your interview physically, you want to arrive early, okay? So show up about 30 minutes before your scheduled time to be there. Prepare for frequently asked questions on an interview, okay? So be ready to tell them about yourself, emphasize your strengths, and tell them why you want to be a PA and what you will offer the class if you're accepted, or even the profession if given the chance, okay? Very important. If you're looking to be a PA as a stepping stone to going to medical school, you're barking up the wrong tree. And in most cases, to be honest with you, medical school will not accept you anyway if you do this, as most prerequisites are different for PA school as opposed to medical school. So actually telling your interviewers this will, in most cases, if not all cases, end up as a rejection. If you want to be a physician, then apply to medical school. Okay, so PA school is not a stepping stone anywhere, to any other profession. PA school is a training program to prepare you to be a physician assistant. Tell them what PAs do and your interactions with them, if you've had any, and how they differ from medical doctors or how they differ from nurse practitioners. Answer your questions, the questions that are posed to you, succinctly and honestly. And it's okay to be nervous. I get this question a lot. Everyone is nervous. The key here is to keep your nerves from not allowing you to think and function clearly. Most people shake, all right, and that's okay. Everybody shakes when they get nervous, and interviewers will not count that against you. If you're able to bring a water bottle or a cup of water to the interview with you, keep it out of the way or maybe on the floor. And if your mouth gets dry, you could take a sip of water when you get nervous, because again, when you get nervous, your mouth gets a little dry, or when you're talking a lot like I am, okay? If you get distracted from being nervous, ask them if you've answered the questions adequately, or you can ask them to repeat the question again if you got off track. But don't do this repeatedly, because again, you want to make sure that you listen to your interviewer carefully. Sometimes interviewers will pose, 2-step or 3-step questions. And I always say that that's a little unfair, because people are so nervous that you answer the first question and then you forgot the second or third step. So in those cases, you can pause briefly and ask them, could you please repeat the second and third question you asked? And again, you want to make sure you pay attention so that you don't keep doing this, because that may reflect negatively. And before you answer questions, it's okay to take a small pause to think about how you're going to answer that question. That's okay, as long as your pauses are not too long. And it's good to bring a notepad and a pen with you with a few questions that you would like to ask them at the end, because most schools will ask you, do you have any questions at the end? It's always a good idea to ask them a few questions. So after your interviews are done, it's a good idea to try to get business cards if you're there physically, or at least the names of those individuals that interviewed you. And then it's also always a nice idea to send them a thank you email, or even send them a thank you card after you leave, thanking them for the time and information they gave you about the program. This is just a basic courtesy. Some programs will respond quickly afterward, while others may take months to make final decisions on their class list. It depends on the program and what type of admissions they have. So rolling admissions, you might hear right away, or some programs will have rolling admissions and not make their final decisions until the very end. So leaving the program, it's always a good idea for you to know what their timeline is. And that's actually a good question to ask at the end. What is your timeline? Generally speaking, when should I hear from you again in terms of feedback? But it's not a good idea to repeatedly call or email programs asking about your status if you haven't heard either way. About maybe 1 month from your interview, you can call or email them once to ask about your status or the general process question as to when you can expect to hear back from them. But if you call repeatedly, again, that may reflect negatively on you. Try and be patient. Most programs experience very high application and inquiry rates. So it's very stressful for programs. They don't mean to ignore you, and they don't mean to give you a negative idea or a negative perspective by just not responding to you. But it's just because, like I said, they are inundated with the amount of applications that they're reviewing. And I always say no news is good news. If you're going to be rejected, you're probably going to be rejected fairly quickly. So no news is not a bad thing at all. And like I said, just maybe one, follow-up question about a month after it would be a good idea, just to kind of give you an idea of where you stand. So I'm going to kind of end it there. and to see if anybody has any specific questions for me personally about interviewing, and or for our the staff members that are present. Thank you again for your time.